The embarrassing mistake. The flight was just like any other, quiet and peaceful. The plane was cruising smoothly through the sky, with the hum of the engines filling the air. The passengers were relaxed, and the flight attendants were moving up and down the aisles, attending to everyone's needs. Sarah, a young stewardess, was trying to keep up with her duties. She had worked at this airline for a while now, but today felt different. There was a nervous energy in the air. Sarah's mind kept wandering. She had always dreamed of working for a big airline, and this was her chance. She had worked hard to earn her position as a flight attendant, but sometimes it felt like she still had a lot to prove. She hoped today would go smoothly, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected was going to happen. She reached the first-class cabin, where the most important passengers were seated. As Sarah moved down the aisle, she glanced over at a well-dressed man sitting by the window. He was reading a newspaper, his face calm and serious. His sharp suit and expensive-looking watch caught Sarah's attention. He looked like the kind of person who was always in control, always calm, always collected. She hadn't noticed him before, but something about him stood out. Her thoughts were interrupted when she realized it was time to serve coffee to the first-class passengers. She grabbed the cart, took a deep breath, and started walking toward the man by the window. As she pushed the cart, her nerves started to get the better of her. She could feel her hands shaking slightly. When she reached him, she smiled nervously. "Coffee, sir?" she asked politely. He looked up from his newspaper and smiled back. "Yes, please," he said in a calm, deep voice. Sarah carefully poured the coffee into his cup, trying to keep her hand steady. She didn't want to spill it, but as she tried to tilt the coffee pot just right, something went wrong. The pot slipped out of her hand slightly, and before she could react, the coffee splashed onto the man's face. For a moment, everything froze. The hot coffee spread across his face, and the man's eyes widened in surprise. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Her face turned bright red, and she immediately began to apologize. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," Sarah exclaimed, her voice trembling. She reached for a napkin, but she could see the coffee staining his expensive suit. The man didn't say anything at first. He just wiped his face slowly, still calm. "I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry," Sarah repeated, her voice panicking now. She wanted to fix the situation, but the more she apologized, the worse it seemed to get. She could feel the other passengers staring, some of them whispering to each other. The man sat still, not saying a word. Sarah's hand shook as she tried to clean up the mess. She was mortified. It was the worst thing that could have happened. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she could do to make it right. She could already feel her chances of a promotion slipping away. The man was important, she could tell. His suit, his watch, everything about him said he had power. And now she had made a terrible mistake in front of him. As Sarah continued to clean up the mess, the man finally spoke. "It's all right," he said calmly, wiping his face with the napkin. It was an accident. But Sarah wasn't so sure. The coffee had stained his suit, and the last thing she wanted was for him to be angry with her. She kept apologizing, hoping he would tell her it was okay and move on. But she could see it in his eyes, a quiet, unspoken judgment. She finished cleaning up, but the awkward silence lingered. The man didn't say anything else. He just returned to his newspaper as though nothing had happened. Sarah stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. Should she keep apologizing, or was it time to move on? She could feel her face burning with embarrassment. As she walked away, she glanced at the man one last time. He was still reading his newspaper, completely composed. Sarah couldn't help but wonder who he really was. He looked like someone who had everything in control, someone who didn't let anything bother him. But was he really as calm as he appeared? Did he care that she had spilled coffee on him? The more Sarah thought about it, the more she realized that this wasn't just an ordinary passenger. There was something about him that didn't add up, And as she continued with her duties, she couldn't shake the feeling that this embarrassing mistake might turn out to be more than just a bad moment. What if this man had a connection to the airline? What if this spilled coffee would change her life in ways she couldn't even imagine yet? The mystery of who this man really was and what would happen next hung in the air as Sarah continued with her work, her thoughts racing. Little did she know, the coffee spill was only the beginning of a story that would change everything. You said, the shocking revelation. Sarah had tried to shake off the embarrassment of spilling coffee on the mysterious man, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. As she continued her duties, every glance toward the first-class cabin made her feel even more self-conscious. The man hadn't spoken much after the incident, and he still appeared to be reading his newspaper, completely calm and composed, but Sarah couldn't help but wonder if he was silently judging her. She tried to focus on the rest of her tasks, but something nagged at her. She knew that the man couldn't just be a regular passenger. His calm demeanor, his expensive suit, and his quiet but confident attitude all pointed to something more. She had spilled coffee on someone important, and now she was left wondering how much trouble she had gotten herself into. As the flight continued, Sarah noticed that the other flight attendants were keeping their distance from her, almost as though they were avoiding her. She wasn't sure if it was because of the coffee incident or if it was just her imagination. But one thing was certain, she felt like the walls were closing in around her. The man who had been the victim of her mistake was still sitting quietly in his seat, as if nothing had happened. But Sarah knew better. After a while, the plane began its descent toward the airport. The captain's voice came over the intercom, signaling the final approach. Sarah was still in the back of the cabin, securing everything for landing, but her mind was far away. She kept glancing toward the first-class section, wondering what would happen when the flight was over. As the plane landed smoothly and taxied to the gate, Sarah couldn't shake the sense of dread. She had to face the man again. Would he be angry? Would he report her to her superiors? Was this the end of her career as a flight attendant? Once the plane came to a complete stop, Sarah began to prepare for deplaning. She could see the man gathering his things, his movements precise and controlled. Her heart raced. She knew she had to apologize one more time, even if he had already said it was okay. She just had to make sure he didn't hold it against her. As she approached him, Sarah took a deep breath. She had to do this. She had to apologize one more time and explain how sorry she was for her mistake. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart was pounding as she slowly walked toward him. "Excuse me, sir," Sarah said as she stood in front of him. "I just wanted to apologize again for the coffee. I'm really sorry for what happened. I truly didn't mean it." The man looked up from his newspaper and met her gaze. For a moment, Sarah couldn't read his expression. Was he annoyed? Indifferent? She couldn't tell. He was silent for a few seconds, and then he slowly stood up. "It's fine," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But I think you should know something." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. What did he mean? Was he going to report her? Was this the end of her career? The man took a step closer to her and lowered his voice just enough so that only she could hear. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Sarah's eyes widened in confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. He smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they know something you don't. "I'm the one who owns the plane you're working on," he said simply. Sarah blinked in shock, struggling to process what he had just said. What was he talking about? This man owned the plane. She had just spilled coffee on someone who owned the entire aircraft. "You own this plane?" she stammered, trying to wrap her mind around the revelation. The man nodded. "I do. And I'm also the one who owns the airline. I'm the CEO." For a few moments, Sarah stood there, frozen in disbelief. The reality of the situation hit her like a wave. She had spilled coffee on the CEO of the airline. She had made a fool of herself in front of the most important person on the plane, and probably the most important person in the entire company. She felt the blood rush to her face as she fought the urge to collapse from embarrassment. But as she looked into the man's eyes, she saw something unexpected. He wasn't angry. He wasn't upset. In fact, he seemed amused. "I understand it was an accident," he said, his tone much softer now. "But I think you owe me a bit more than an apology, don't you?" Sarah was speechless. What did he mean by that? Was he going to fire her? Or did he want something more? Before she could speak, the man raised a hand. "Don't worry. I'm not upset. In fact, I think I might be impressed by your bravery." "Bravery," Sarah repeated, still trying to make sense of what was happening. "But I made a mistake. I spilled coffee all over you." "Yes, but you didn't panic," he said. "You took responsibility. Not many people would do that. Most would have run away or tried to cover up their mistake." Sarah wasn't sure what to say. The man seemed to be praising her for something that had only made her feel embarrassed. But there was a strange shift in the atmosphere. Something about this encounter didn't feel like a simple accident anymore. "Don't worry," he said with a wink. "I think you've just proven you're capable of handling much more than serving coffee." And with that, he turned and walked off the plane, leaving Sarah standing in the aisle, confused and overwhelmed by the turn of events. What did he mean? Was there something more to this encounter than she realized? As she returned to her duties, the mystery of the man and his words lingered in her mind. This wasn't over. And she had a feeling that the story of the coffee spill was only just beginning. A new opportunity. The next few days after the flight, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the man, the CEO of the airline. His calm demeanor, his unusual words, and his mysterious smile had left her with more questions than answers. What did he mean when he said she was capable of more than just serving coffee? What was he hinting at when he mentioned her bravery? Sarah tried to move on, but the thoughts kept swirling in her mind. Was he serious? Did he see something in her that she didn't see in herself? Was there a chance that this mistake, this embarrassing moment, could somehow lead to something bigger? Then, on her day off, she received a phone call. It was from the airline's Human Resources Department. "Hello, Sarah. This is Emily from the HR department at Skyline Airways," the voice on the other end of the phone said. "We would like to talk to you about an opportunity." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Was this about the coffee incident? Was she being reprimanded or even fired? She felt her throat tighten, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "What opportunity?" she asked, her mind racing. "We've received some feedback about you," Emily continued, "specifically from Mr. Charles Donovan, the CEO of the company." The name sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Mr. Donovan, the man she had accidentally spilled coffee on. What could he possibly have said about her? Was this it? The moment she would be let go? "I've been asked to inform you that Mr. Donovan has requested a meeting with you," Emily said. "He believes you might be the right fit for a special project. Could you come to the headquarters tomorrow morning?" Sarah's heart pounded. A meeting with the CEO. She had no idea what to expect. But one thing was certain. The man hadn't forgotten her. And now, it seemed, he was offering her something. Something big. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Skyline Airways headquarters, still reeling from the phone call. The building was sleek and modern, with a grand entrance that made her feel small and out of place. She took a deep breath before entering the lobby. A receptionist greeted her, and soon, she was escorted to an elevator that took her to the top floor. As the elevator doors opened, Sarah was greeted by a breathtaking view of the city. She followed the assistant down a long corridor until they stopped in front of a large, glass-paneled office. Inside, Charles Donovan stood by the window, looking out at the skyline. His back was turned, but Sarah could feel the weight of his presence. "Miss Harris," he said, without turning around. His voice was calm, almost soothing. "Please, come in." Sarah entered the office, feeling like a deer caught in headlights. Her heart raced, and her palms were sweaty. She had no idea what to expect, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would change everything. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair in front of his desk. As Sarah sat down, he turned around, finally meeting her gaze. I'm sure you're wondering why I asked for this meeting. Sarah nodded, still unsure of what was going on. Yes, sir. I wasn't sure if this was about the coffee incident or... Charles Donovan smiled, interrupting her. I understand why you might think that. But no, Sarah, it's not about the coffee. Sarah blinked. It's not. No, he said, shaking his head. It's about potential. I've been watching you, and I believe you have qualities that are more than just those of a flight attendant. You have the ability to handle pressure, to stay calm in difficult situations, and that's why I think you'd be a perfect fit for something bigger. Sarah felt a rush of confusion and excitement. What? What do you mean? I want to offer you an opportunity to join a new program we're launching, Charles said. It's a leadership development program designed for people with potential like you. We're looking for individuals who can rise to the challenge, take on more responsibility, and make a real impact in the company. And I believe you could be one of them. Sarah's mind was spinning. Was he serious? Was this really happening? She had gone from being a nervous flight attendant spilling coffee on a man to being offered a leadership role by the CEO himself. She didn't know if she was dreaming or if this was real. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm just a flight attendant. I don't know anything about leadership or running an airline. Charles leaned forward, his eyes piercing hers. That's exactly why I think you're perfect. You don't have the experience, but you have the drive, the humility, and the potential to learn. This program is designed to teach you everything you need to know. You'll be mentored by some of the best in the industry. It's an opportunity few people ever get. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it also felt like she was being handed something too big, too overwhelming. Could she really rise to the occasion? Could she truly handle the responsibility of leadership? I don't know what to say, she murmured, still in shock. Charles smiled again, a confident, reassuring smile. Say yes, Sarah. Say yes to something more. Say yes to a future you never thought possible. As Sarah sat there, processing everything, she realized that her life was about to change forever. What had started as a humiliating mistake was now leading her toward an incredible opportunity. But would she take the leap? Would she trust herself to rise to the challenge? The answer was becoming clearer with each passing second. This was her chance, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady and filled with newfound determination. Charles Donovan extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Sarah. And just like that, Sarah's life had taken a dramatic turn. The journey she had never expected had only just begun. The training begins. The days following Sarah's meeting with Charles Donovan felt like a whirlwind. After she agreed to join the leadership development program, everything seemed to happen all at once. She had barely processed what had just occurred before she was sent off to the company's training facility, where she would undergo a rigorous series of courses designed to transform her into a potential leader in the airline industry. Her first day at the facility was overwhelming. The sleek, modern building housed state-of-the-art equipment and a team of mentors who were ready to help her achieve her full potential. As she walked through the doors of the training center, Sarah couldn't help but feel out of place. She was just a flight attendant after all. The other candidates in the program looked so confident and polished, as though they had been preparing for this kind of work for years. They were all dressed in sharp suits and carried themselves with an air of professionalism that Sarah had never known. But despite her nerves, she reminded herself that she was here for a reason. She had been chosen by the CEO himself, Charles Donovan, to be part of this exclusive program. If he believed in her, then she needed to believe in herself. The first session of the day was a leadership workshop. As Sarah entered the room, she saw a dozen other candidates sitting in their seats, all eyes on the instructor who stood at the front of the room. The instructor, a tall, well-dressed man with a stern face, introduced himself as Mr. Thompson. He wasted no time getting into the material. Today, we're going to talk about what it means to be a leader, he began. Leadership is not about titles. It's not about power. It's about influence. It's about making others believe in your vision, in your decisions. And it's about having the courage to step up when others hesitate. Sarah listened intently, absorbing every word. She had never thought of leadership in such a way. To her, being a leader had always meant being in charge, telling people what to do. But now, it was starting to make sense. Leadership wasn't about control. It was about inspiring others, about earning their trust and respect. The workshop continued with a series of exercises designed to test their decision-making abilities and their ability to work under pressure. Sarah found herself both challenged and inspired. The tasks weren't easy, and she struggled at times, but each time she felt like giving up. She reminded herself of why she was here. She wasn't just a flight attendant anymore. She was someone with potential. She was here to learn, to grow, and to become something more. By the end of the day, Sarah was exhausted. Her head throbbed from all the information she had absorbed, and her body ached from the physical tasks they had been asked to complete. But there was something else, a sense of pride. Despite her doubts, despite her lack of experience, she had made it through the first day. The next few days were just as challenging. The training was intense and demanding. There were long hours spent in classrooms, learning about everything from company management to financial planning. There were hands-on exercises that tested her ability to lead a team, make difficult decisions, and handle high-pressure situations. Sarah's confidence grew with each passing day, but so did her doubts. She wondered if she was truly capable of this. Could she really become the leader they were trying to mold her into? One day, after a particularly grueling training session, Sarah found herself in the company cafeteria, trying to catch her breath. She was seated at a table by herself, sipping water and replaying the day's lessons in her mind. Just as she was beginning to relax, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "It's not easy, is it?" Sarah looked up to see Charles Donovan standing in front of her, a warm smile on his face. He was dressed casually today, but his presence still commanded respect. He sat down across from her, his piercing eyes watching her carefully. Sarah felt a bit startled but smiled back. "It's been harder than I expected," she admitted, "but I'm trying my best. I really want to make this work." "I know you will," Charles said, his voice filled with encouragement. "I've been watching you. You've got the potential, Sarah. You've already shown me that you can rise to the challenge. But remember, leadership isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about learning from your mistakes and growing stronger." Sarah nodded, feeling a sense of reassurance in his words. "I've been making mistakes," she said quietly. "A lot of them. I don't always know what I'm doing." "That's okay," Charles replied. "Nobody expects you to have it all figured out. The key is to stay focused, to keep learning, and to never give up. You'll get there, I promise." For the first time since the program began, Sarah felt a sense of calm. Charles Donovan's belief in her was like a lifeline, pulling her out of her own self-doubt. She had come a long way in just a short time, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, she knew that she had the support and the drive to succeed. The following weeks were a blur of hard work, late nights, and breakthroughs. Sarah continued to push herself, each day proving to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She was learning skills she never thought she would master, and with each new task, her confidence grew. But there was still one thing on her mind. What would happen when the training ended? Would she be ready to take on a leadership role? Would she be able to truly make a difference in the airline industry? As she sat in the cafeteria, reflecting on the journey so far, Sarah realized that no matter what happened next, she had already come further than she ever thought possible. And whatever the future held, she was ready to face it head-on. The unexpected challenge. The weeks of intense training were starting to take their toll on Sarah. She had pushed herself harder than she ever thought she could, and while she had made incredible progress, the weight of the challenge was becoming more apparent each day. The leadership program was demanding, both mentally and physically. Some days, she felt as if she were on the edge of exhaustion, but each time, she found a way to keep going. The thought of her future, of what she could become, kept her moving forward. One afternoon, Sarah was called into a meeting with Mr. Thompson, the stern instructor who had led the first workshop. As she walked into his office, she felt a sense of unease. Mr. Thompson was known for being tough, and while she had done well in most of the training, she knew there was always room for improvement. She took a seat in front of his desk, waiting for him to speak. "Sarah," he began, his tone serious, "I've been following your progress closely. You've shown promise, but there's one thing holding you back. You're still playing it safe. And if you want to lead, you need to step out of your comfort zone." Sarah's heart sank. She had been trying so hard, pushing herself every day, and now it felt like she wasn't doing enough. "What do you mean, Mr. Thompson?" she asked, her voice shaky. "You've been holding back," he said bluntly. "In the exercises, in the group discussions, there's a hesitation in your approach. You're playing it safe, taking the easier route when the harder choice could set you apart. You can't lead if you're afraid to take risks." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She had been doing her best, but maybe her best wasn't enough. Maybe the challenge of leadership was more than she could handle. "I understand, Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, trying to hide her disappointment. "I'll do better." But Mr. Thompson wasn't finished. "I'm going to give you an assignment," he said, leaning forward. "You're going to take the lead on the next training exercise. You'll be responsible for coordinating your team, making the decisions, and executing the plan. There's no room for hesitation. You need to prove to me, and to yourself, that you're ready." Sarah's mind raced. The thought of being in charge was both exciting and terrifying. Could she really do it? Could she step up and lead a team? "I won't let you down," she said, more to herself than to him. "Good," Mr. Thompson replied. "This is your chance to show that you have what it takes. Don't waste it." As Sarah left his office, her mind was spinning. She had always been the one following orders, not giving them. Now she was being asked to take charge. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility. What if she failed? What if she wasn't cut out for this? The next day, Sarah's challenge began. The training exercise was a simulation that involved managing a complex logistical situation. A flight that had been delayed due to a mechanical issue, causing a ripple effect that impacted several other flights. Sarah's team was tasked with resolving the situation, from communicating with the passengers to coordinating with the ground crew. It was a high-stakes scenario that demanded quick thinking, strategic planning, and effective leadership. As Sarah stood in front of her team, she felt the nerves rise within her. The team was counting on her. They were all older, more experienced, and seemed far more capable than she felt. She knew they were watching her closely, waiting to see if she could step up. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice wavering slightly at first. "We've got a big situation on our hands. We need to make sure we keep the passengers informed and the flight schedules back on track. Let's stay calm and think through this step by step." She could see the doubt in their eyes, but she pushed forward. She couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. "John, you'll handle the communications with the ground crew," she instructed. "Linda, get in touch with the pilots and make sure they're updated on the new timelines. I'll take care of the passengers and ensure they're all well informed." Sarah gave the team their assignments and then took a deep breath. It was time to execute the plan. The next hour felt like a blur of phone calls, emails, and frantic decisions. But slowly, Sarah began to gain confidence. Her team was working together, and the plan was falling into place. She found herself making decisions quickly, trusting her instincts. Each successful step brought her a little more confidence. She was leading, really leading, and it felt different than she had imagined. After what felt like an eternity, the situation was resolved. The passengers were rebooked, the flight delays were minimized, and the ground crew had everything under control. The team had done it, and Sarah had done it. When the exercise concluded, Mr. Thompson approached her with a rare smile on his face. "Well done, Sarah," he said, his voice approving. "You handled that better than I expected." Relief flooded through Sarah. She had done it. She had taken charge and succeeded. But the real victory wasn't just in completing the task. It was in proving to herself that she could lead, that she was capable of more than she had ever believed. As Sarah left the training room, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced before. She knew the road ahead was still long, but for the first time, she believed that she could walk it with confidence. The challenge had been daunting, but it had pushed her beyond her limits. And now Sarah was ready for whatever came next. The hidden truth. The days after the intense training exercise flew by in a blur. Sarah's success had left her with a sense of pride, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Although she had proven herself in the eyes of her peers and instructors, there was a deeper layer to leadership, one that she wasn't quite sure how to grasp. The challenge of leadership wasn't just about making decisions and leading a team. It was about understanding the people you were leading, and more importantly, understanding yourself. It was during a quiet afternoon, as Sarah sat in the break room reflecting on everything she had learned so far, that she received an unexpected invitation. The letter, neatly folded and bearing the official seal of the training program, was placed on the table before her. She unfolded it, intrigued. "Dear Sarah, you have shown remarkable growth in your training. However, there is a deeper challenge that awaits you. In order to truly understand what it means to lead, you must confront something that lies beyond the surface. You are invited to a special, secret assignment. This is a chance for you to prove not only your skills but your character. Your mission will begin tomorrow at 8 a.m. You will receive further instructions at that time. This is not a typical training exercise. This is something more. We look forward to seeing how you handle the hidden truths that lie ahead. Best regards, the leadership program team." Sarah's heart raced as she read the letter. A secret assignment. What could that mean? She had already been tested in many ways. Now it seemed like the program was pushing her into a completely unknown territory. Was she ready for this? Was it going to be another test of her skills? Or was there something more personal involved? The next morning, Sarah arrived early at the designated meeting spot. She had no idea what to expect, but the uncertainty kept her on edge. When the clock struck 8 a.m., the doors to the room opened, and a familiar face greeted her. "Mr. Thompson." "Sarah," he said with a serious look, "we're glad you accepted this challenge. What you're about to learn will take you deeper than any of the exercises you've completed so far. It's not just about decision-making or logistics. It's about your ability to lead when the truth is hidden from you." Sarah was confused. "What do you mean? What's hidden?" Mr. Thompson motioned for her to follow him. He led her down a narrow hallway to a small room that had been set up like a cozy living area. The chairs were arranged in a circle, and a large screen was positioned at the front. At first, it seemed like just another meeting room, but as Sarah looked around, she noticed something strange. There were no other trainees here. It was just her. He handed her a tablet. "This will explain everything. I need you to watch what's on the screen and pay close attention." Sarah took the tablet and sat down. As soon as she tapped the screen, a video began to play. The footage was shaky at first, but as it cleared up, Sarah could make out a familiar face, hers. The video showed her in the midst of the training exercises she had completed. It showed her confidently leading her team during the logistical challenge, giving instructions and managing the situation. But then, something changed. The footage cut to moments where she seemed uncertain, questioning her decisions in private conversations with other trainees, moments she had never intended anyone to see. Sarah felt a chill run through her. How did they have this footage? Why was it being shown to her? The video continued to play, revealing a conversation between two instructors. Sarah is good at leading when she has to, but her true test will be when she doubts herself. She has potential, but she needs to see her own weaknesses before she can truly lead. The words echoed in Sarah's mind, and for the first time, she felt exposed. All of the insecurities she had tried to hide were now out in the open. Her doubts, her moments of weakness. Everything was being laid bare. "What does this mean?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "What's the point of showing me this?" Mr. Thompson sat across from her. "The point is that you need to confront your weaknesses. Every leader has doubts. Every leader struggles with their own self-image. But to lead, you must learn how to face those fears and doubts head-on. This isn't just about managing a crisis or leading a team. It's about leading yourself." Sarah sat in stunned silence. The weight of the truth began to sink in. She had been so focused on proving her skills, on showing the world she was capable, that she had never really examined the parts of herself that made her doubt. Now, in front of her, the evidence of her insecurities was clear. But instead of crumbling under the pressure, Sarah felt a spark of determination. "I see now," she whispered. "It's not about being perfect. It's about accepting my flaws and still moving forward." Mr. Thompson nodded. "Exactly. You can't lead others until you learn to lead yourself, flaws and all." As Sarah walked out of the room, she felt a strange sense of clarity. She wasn't the perfect leader, but that didn't mean she wasn't capable of leading. The next challenge would be learning to accept the parts of herself she had been trying to hide. And she was ready. The transformation. The days after Sarah's secret assignment felt different. She no longer looked at leadership as a skill to be honed just through external challenges. It was no longer about proving to others that she was capable. It was about understanding who she truly was, inside and out. Sarah had been forced to confront her fears and doubts, and though it had been uncomfortable, it had made her stronger. She returned to her regular training routine, but with a new sense of confidence. The instructors noticed a shift in her. She wasn't the same person who had first walked into the program, someone focused solely on being perfect and avoiding mistakes. Now, she approached each challenge with an open mind, ready to learn from her experiences, whether they were successes or failures. Her team, too, could sense the change. There was a new energy in the way Sarah led. She no longer dictated orders from a place of uncertainty. She collaborated, listened, and encouraged her teammates to voice their ideas. She didn't have all the answers, but she trusted her team to help find them together. One day, during a particularly tough exercise, Sarah was faced with a situation that would have previously caused her to panic. Her team was running out of time, and things weren't going as planned. In the past, she would have tried to control every aspect of the situation, worrying about making a mistake. But now, she took a deep breath, focused, and assessed the situation calmly. "We need to adjust," she said to her team. "I know this wasn't what we expected, but let's figure it out together. What are our options?" The team fell into a brief but intense discussion, and within minutes, they came up with a solution. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Sarah felt a rush of relief, not because everything had gone smoothly, but because they had solved the problem together. The real victory wasn't in the perfect solution. It was in the teamwork and the confidence she had in her team and in herself. Later that evening, Sarah met with Mr. Thompson for a final debrief. She could sense the pride in his voice as he spoke. "You've come a long way, Sarah," he said. "You've learned the most important lesson. Leadership isn't about perfection. It's about being true to yourself, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and knowing how to rely on the people around you." Sarah nodded. "I get it now. I've been focused so much on proving I can do everything alone that I forgot it's okay to rely on others. It's okay to not have all the answers." Mr. Thompson smiled. "Exactly. That's the essence of leadership. It's not about standing alone at the top. It's about leading with humility, integrity, and a willingness to learn from every experience." As Sarah left the room, she felt lighter than she had in months. She no longer carried the weight of trying to be perfect, and that freedom gave her the strength to keep moving forward. The journey she had begun was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly ready for whatever came next.